Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. You all know me, I'm Rebecca. You'll see on the screen, in case you didn't know and you don't follow the same social media I do, today is the 32nd anniversary of Smoke-Free Skies. Can y'all even imagine a time that you were on an airplane and people were smoking? Blech. It gives me the creeps thinking about it. And it was really very fitting because American for Non-Smokers' Rights was very involved in that back in the 80s. And our speaker today on Jewel, or our host, is from A&R. So I just thought that would be a little fun thing to share with everybody. So let's see, I'm going to go to my notes so I do better. Just a couple of announcements. The March 25th Roundtable, we will be announcing soon. If anybody has any specific suggestions for a next sort of host/topic, shoot me an email today. Or if you're interested in hosting and talking about the work that you're doing, that would be great. I have a couple ideas, a couple requests out, but it has not been finalized yet. So we're open to whatever topic you all might be interested in. Also, I'm excited to say that our annual Smoke-Free SC Summit on May 18th, y'all will be hearing about that next week. The launch is coming, and we're going to be focusing on overcoming health disparities in tobacco prevention and control. We've got a couple national speakers, some fabulous in-state panelists, and it's just going to be a great day in May, and it's going to be here in person in Columbia. So all that information is coming out next week. Just as a reminder, what our format is that Beth Johnson with American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network is going to give a brief legislative update. Let us know if anything has moved in tobacco-related bills in the last 4 weeks. And then we're going to move it over to Anjul, our host, who's going to give a short presentation about messaging related to building local support around smoke-free policy. And then we're going to open up to Q&A and discussion and roundtable. And at any time that you're interested, you can use the raise the hand emoji or throw a question or a comment in the chat box, and we will do our very best to keep up with everybody. I think that is all I have for openings. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to Beth Johnson for a South Carolina legislative update.
All right. Good morning, everyone. And yes, happy Friday, Phil. Right. Whew, it's been a long week, long weeks. We are middle of the State House session. Things are crazy. Things are wild. And Rebecca said, give an update from the last 4 weeks. I mean, it feels like, I don't know, it feels like it's years. So it's lots of things that happened and passed. So really quick update of what's happening right now in the State House. The tobacco retail licensing statewide bill that some of you are familiar with and the national partners have been following for a few years. It got a hearing last week, which was really exciting and unexpected. We didn't expect that at all, but it received a hearing with the House 3M subcommittee. It was an interesting turn of events, and the committee actually adjourned debate, and they're going to take hearing testimony again this week. So just a reminder that the tobacco retail license bill would create a retail license for any tobacco retailers in South Carolina, very similar to what you would have to purchase for an alcohol license to sell alcohol. So excited to see that getting some movement, and it's really interesting. We've had a little bit of pushback, of course, from retailers, convenience store folks, which we expected, and some pushback from legislators who are just, you know, they don't want their rights to be taken away. So interesting there. I'll say thanks to Yarley Seeley with Hart for taking the lead on tobacco retail license. And if anyone is interested in maybe sharing testimony with the committee next week or submitting written testimony, please let me know, and I can connect you and kind of guide you on how to do that. I think it's really important that they hear from folks in the community who work with tobacco control issues every day, especially as it pertains to youth having access to these products. So tobacco retail license is moving. A few other things have been popping up. We've had the tobacco industry and Jewel talking to our legislators and asking for really ridiculous things. So it's been fun to kind of talk with a few of our senators and House members and shed some light on the real issues. So things like flavored products and synthetic nicotine, those things are all kind of popping up. And what does that mean for our state? And what does that mean for our children? And some of the legislators have truly the best interest of the children at heart. They think they're doing good, but the tobacco lobbyists and Joel are selling them on the wrong things and convincing them otherwise. So it's been fun to talk with them and try to explain to them why South Carolina is not ready for a statewide flavor bill that does not include all products or all flavors. And to also explain to them why, really it's a moot point to work on T21 right now in our state when it's a federal law and we have this preemption bill looming. So all of these bills have kind of been distractions at the state level, but they have been just really a lot of conversation about tobacco over the past four weeks that I don't think any of the national partners saw coming this soon in session. We all were focused on preemption, which is good and which we continue to be. We don't expect preemption to move right now. And again, this is tobacco preemption that would prevent all the local good things that you guys are doing, the local work. It would prevent local work as it pertains to flavors and local tobacco retail licensing. So we don't expect that bill to move right now, which is good. That could change in the next hour, but we're being told right now it's not moving, which is great work. So kudos, thank you to everyone for helping with that. And so, what I think, my conspiracy theories, mine is that because that bill is not moving, tobacco industry is trying to figure out what they can move and what they can do. So that's why we see, I think we're hearing about some of these other issues coming up. Lots of activities and opportunities for you guys to get involved. So again, if you're interested in sharing testimony on tobacco retail licensing, let me know. You can put it in the chat box here, or you can send me a message, let me know. If you're interested in sharing written testimony, let me know that as well. And we have a couple of smaller local groups that are working on some really interesting projects with smoke-free. So again, if you're interested in this local smoke-free ordinance work, please reach out. Let us know how we can engage you with that. We have some projects in the upstate and in the low country. And we have a coalition in the low country who's working on some local ordinances around flavors and retail licensing. And then Dr. Jay Keeley's group in Rock Hill working on local retail licensing in Rock Hill. So local activities and work happening as well around policy and advocacy change. And we definitely have a place for you. So if you're interested in getting involved, let us know and we'll plug you in. For now, stay tuned on this tobacco retail license bill. And let's don't forget how important stopping this preemption bill really is for all the work that we're doing. So maybe I did that under 5 minutes. So if anybody has any question, I'll take a quick question.
We absolutely have time for questions if anyone has a question or comment.
Yeah.
Were you surprised, Beth, that the subcommittee chair, she really, I think, helped with the getting that hearing scheduled, I guess. Was that up to her to schedule that hearing on Wednesday?
Yeah, Dr. Keeley. So the tobacco retail license bill is a bill that was been recommended from the Children's Committee. So it's a committee of legislators and citizens from around the state called the Children's Committee. And they recommend bills to the General Assembly. And so this bill was actually a bill in the making. I think this is maybe the third or fourth year. The Children's Committee has recommended this bill. And it's my understanding that the Children's Committee asked for a hearing on this bill. And that's what brought it up to the attention to receive a subcommittee hearing. Again, it was a total surprise to all of us. We did not expect that to happen. And I was convinced that the tobacco industry was behind this and they were going to hijack this bill. But so far, they have not. So that's good. And that was a pleasant surprise. And the bill sponsors are Representative Beth Bernstein from Columbia and Representative Neil Collins from the upstate. And they both are leaders on the Children's Committee. And they are really leading and pushing through for this bill.
Yeah, that was good to see. I thought Michael Collins made some very excellent kind of comments back to some of the folks testifying, and Yarley did a great job kind of pushing back against Michael Fields from the Convenience Store and Petroleum Marketers Association.
Yes. The opposition, of course, is that this is going to be burdensome on convenience stores to require a license to sell the product. It's going to be not cost effective, and it's going to be too burdensome on them, especially in light of COVID. And that was kind of another side argument that was used. So, you know, that's the only argument they have.
Yeah, that's one thing actually that came to my mind. There wasn't really any talk about the cost savings of where we have youth who do not initiate or who quit. And that is something we've been putting together as part of our platform here in York County and Rock Hill. So if I get a chance to testify, you know, I might talk about that.
Hey, great. Thank you.
Beth, can I jump in real quick on that observation? So you are right, Dr. Keeley. I was actually prepared to address that because in all of the previous hearings, the industry has brought up how we're going to lose money in the state by preempting those policies and putting other tobacco control policies in place. And I was really expecting the tobacco industry to testify at this hearing, but they really did leave it to the retailers. Although I can tell you that Reynolds American was nipping at my heels last week, going from office to office, trying to reach members as well. But, you know, as you saw, Reynolds American, Philip Morris, they were all there, but none of them spoke. And, you know, so the fiscal argument didn't really come up like it had in the past. Now, I would be really curious to know if they have plans to tackle the next hearing since they passed this time around. And, but I think that would be absolutely phenomenal for you to proactively address. There are just so many other things, and we only had an hour of time in that hearing to address all the other crazy arguments that were being flaunted for reasons to oppose the bill. So definitely encourage that approach for the next hearing.
Yeah, if any of the partners on the call have, you know, check the members of that subcommittee 3, and if any are in your area or you're a constituent, you know, please, you know, send them some kind of information about, you know, what you believe.
Yeah.
Beth, can you repeat what the subcommittee was again?
Sure. It's 3M, which is medical, military, and municipality. It's a 3M subcommittee. But Rebecca, why don't we do this? Why don't I send out to, I'll send to you to share with the group a list of the subcommittee members and the hearing information for next week. So there is a deadline. If anyone is interested in sharing and speaking to the subcommittee, the deadline to register to speak virtually is on Monday. And if you're going to do it in person, the hearing is next Thursday. It took me a second. Next Thursday, right? Yes. So either way, let me know, and I'll help you get prepped, and I'll make sure that we can help you get registered, and we'll make it as easy and as painless as possible for you to come and to share. And I'm certainly looking at a few of you on here to be prepared to share next week. I think it's great to hear from local folks, and you guys are doing the local work. They need to hear from you.
And one other thing, if anyone on here wants to speak to address the alternative nicotine definition issue, we thought we had that cleared up, but Deotis, for whatever reason, they want that definition reinserted, and we know that can be problematic for tax reasons moving forward and deregulation for these newer tobacco products. So any encouragement to leave the tobacco product definition as is would be fantastic.
Um, so let me also say this for expedience sake, Beth and Yarly, if y'all want to put your email in the chat box, Yarly, I don't know if you're on a phone or if you're at a computer, y'all want to throw your email in the chat box just for people to get quickly if they want to reach out to you. And then Beth, if there's anything you could put in the chat box to also save time of emails, you could do that as well. But I'm happy to send something out after this call also.
Yeah, I'll put both our emails. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Charlie. I'll put our emails in there, and yeah, we can certainly help follow up if anyone's interested. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much. It's great to hear from you. I hadn't heard about the TRL, so it's good to know that that's actually happened. That's intriguing. All right, so I'm gonna, well, before I move on, let me just double check. Does anybody raise a hand, unmute if you have another question, comment related to legislation? Okay. Anjul, I'm going to pass it over to you. Anjul Smith is the Southern State Strategist. I'm not even looking at notes. I remember this for Americans for Non-Smokers' Rights and Foundation, which, you know, if you want to take a second and tell us the difference between the two entities, that would be really good. And I'm just going to pass it over to you and let you share your screen. And thanks for being here, Anjul. And you guys remember, if you want to raise your hand or put a question in the chat box while she's presenting, go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. We confuse ourselves sometimes with the difference between the two, but it's basically our 501c3 and our C4. So the American Non-Smokers' Rights Foundation is our C3 organization, and Americans for Non-Smokers' Rights is our C4 advocacy lobbying arm. And we kind of use them interchangeably. So we understand when you guys do as well. But it was really good to see the graphic from Smoke Free Skies. That this is the anniversary for that, and it's really, I think about where our organization has been in this movement and how much has happened over the years, and that we were such a big part of, making airlines smoke free and the things that we just really take for granted right now. And so I think about the work that you guys are doing and the conversations you're having and the fights you're having, and hopefully there will be a time when we look back on all this, be like, you know what, that was a piece of cake, right? Stressful right now, but there will be a time when all of this stuff will seem like it shouldn't have been this hard, and we shouldn't have had these conversations. But I'm gonna talk a little bit about some messaging with communities around smoke-free stuff. And I know you guys are working on a number of issues across the board, but give me a moment to share my screen and let me disclose a few things. When I share my screen, I can't see you guys. I don't know if you can see me, but I won't be able to see the chat or hands or anything. So I'll try to sort of listen in case somebody needs to jump in and interrupt. And then otherwise, I'll be happy to really take your questions and stuff during that portion of the session. So I don't do two things at one time well. So give me a second to share. Let's see. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see the screen. And our topic today is lessons from the field, messaging to lay the groundwork for local policy change. And again, I've been with ANR, I think 15, 16-ish, 17 years, maybe 15, I don't know. It's been a long time. And I've been a part of so many great smoke-free campaigns. So much has happened. And, to hear you guys even have this conversation about making sure preemption doesn't get into some of those policies, the work that we're able to do in so many states, particularly my southern states, is because, a lot of these states don't have preemption, and they are able to really make good policy progress at the local level. And for so many years, you guys know, South Carolina really led the nation in local smoke-free policy work. But, a lot has changed over the years. And, there's sort of a different environment for smoke-free policy campaigns. So today I'm going to try to focus on some of the challenges and addressing some of those, and taking on a smoke-free campaign, kind of going from apathy to excitement in some of our communities. I'm going to focus on a current campaign we have that's growing in Fayette County, Georgia, but I'm going to bring in some examples from some other communities that I've been a part of, and just showing how some of the messaging has developed in some of these campaigns. I want to just first be real honest and transparent and state the obvious. You know, these are really challenging times. The current political climate, just in so many different ways, just makes this really tough to talk about public health policy, to talk about smoke-free, to talk about, you know, all of the different things we're trying to do with the people we're trying to protect and all of that, right? It's just a challenging time right now. When we were passing all of those policies back in the day, some of them almost seemed too easy, right? People were really excited, they were on board, and we just had to give them good language and move it through the process. Now, it's a little more challenging. Plus, we have this illusion of smoke-free protection, sort of this idea that people are protected and that we don't need this. Every place is smoke-free, and I say that in air quotes, even if you can't see me right now. But people want to pretend, or they're under the impression that everything is already smoke-free. So why do we need these policies? And then, you know, we also have the issue of just even with our own coalitions and partners, issue and messaging confidence. And so those will all sort of be the backdrop of talking about some of this. I want to also say what I'm sharing today, none of this is scientific. I know some of you guys are probably screenshotting and taking notes and be like, where did you get this from? What's the data and the scientific, and have you tested these messages? No, let me just say that up front, no. But in the absence of all of that, communities are still doing this work, and they're trying to find ways to talk about this in ways that are effective and help them move down the road and get to a place where they can really have good, strong smoke-free policy campaigns. So 2 tough questions that coalitions and campaigns are tackling. One is, do we really need a smoke-free policy, right? And I know you guys are hearing that all the time. The other is, how do we talk about this with people who just don't seem to care? We've gotten to the point where, you know, we've probably passed the policies in the places where the low-hanging fruit and even that next level up, right? Where the little step ladder will get us these policies. But now we're in these tough places. And how do we talk about this with people who just really don't seem to care about protecting hospitality workers, or who care about public health equity, or who care about, you know, whether or not you're, you know, being exposed to secondhand smoke? And those are real questions. So let's take on the first. Do we really need a smoke-free policy? And, you know, in the case of Fayette County in Georgia, you know, one of the first things they decided to do was to ask the community. This is a coalition, and I'll talk about the Fayette County group. It's a drug-free coalition that has done a ton of work around other drug and alcohol related issues. They're a pretty savvy group with those kinds of issues across the board. You know, they're sort of SAMHSA trained, CADCA trained. And so they haven't necessarily taken on this kind of issue, but they're no stranger to taking on tough policy issues. Even when it came to this, even though they all agreed that, yes, this would be great to have a comprehensive smoke-free policy, the big question was, but do we really need it? Even amongst themselves, they're asking that. So they decided to ask the community. They ended up doing sort of an informal poll. And then when you get the results, if you like them, share them. But if you're not doing any real official, you don't have to share these results, right? So this group did just that. They did a secondhand smoke survey that they crafted with some help, and they sent it out to, through their, I think through the school board, the Fayette County School Board, and it went out to all of the students, 6th to 12th grade, and their parents. And they were pleasantly surprised. They were asking questions about are you being exposed to secondhand smoke? Where are you being exposed? Do you support banning smoking in all bars, all workplaces, all whatever, right? And they just asked a series of questions. And the feedback they got was really strong. And honestly, they were really surprised. Before that, they weren't sure that the community really felt the need for a campaign, or whether or not they were aware, or whether or not people were being exposed. But the survey told them differently. And you could just feel the sort of energy with the coalition once they got back their survey results. It's like, oh, okay, we can use this. And now we have something to lean on with respect to having conversations with community members, stakeholders, decision makers, and we can run a campaign based on this evidence that we've gotten from the community. This is what they're saying is happening. And so they have been working to find ways to sort of capture their results and share it. They actually sent these results back to everyone who participated in the survey to say, hey, here's what came of the survey you participated in. And just even from the information from, who's clicking on these emails, people are opening the messages, they're clicking through to see the results. They're scanning the barcode that actually takes them to a Tell Your Story link, and that's in partnership with the American Heart Association. And people are really engaging with this. And so the interest is there in the community, and that was really nice to see. The other question is, how do we talk about this with people who don't seem to care, which is a challenge I know that we all sort of face. And the question that we've had to ask is, well, what do they care about? People really need to get to know you need to get to know your community in terms of getting started. Like, identify what's important to the decision makers, the community members, and the stakeholders. And just a couple of examples. Campaigns in New Orleans and Atlanta, they really cared about hospitality workers and social justice and making sure everybody was protected, which was great because that falls in line with our traditional smoke-free messaging, right? Fort Worth, Texas, did not give a crap about workers or people really just being exposed. They were all about, why don't you just go somewhere else? They cared about the business community, and they wanted to know that the business community supported it and what would be the impact. And we had to shape our campaigns accordingly. Every campaign still has these very core messages, and the ones on the left are the ones that we use all the time. Everybody's got a right to smoke-free air. There's no safe level of exposure. No one should have to choose between health and a paycheck, and smoke-free policies are good for health and good for business. The trick is, how do we deliver these through their core messages? And this is the environment that we're in the communities we're dealing with right now. And some of those look like messages that use their terms, right? That we're working to modernize current policy. A really evident sort of a prevalent message point is, doing no harm to our fellow citizens. And that has been very useful in a lot of our campaigns that have been led by conservative legislators. Personal responsibility, fiscal responsibility, saving taxpayer dollars, and reducing business expenses. We can still take the messages that we traditionally use and the information we have at our disposal and craft our messages through vehicles that catch their attention, that pique their interest and get them interested in listening and learning more about and supporting such policies. One of the first things we used with Fayette County was they wanted to do issue briefs. The question was, how do we have this conversation how do we get these conversations started? And so we took the data. So the piece on the left, this is a one pager back and front. And I know you can't see the detail on this document, but the info on the left is the data from the survey results and just kind of capturing a couple of things that stood out, that people were exposed and what's their perception of secondhand smoke exposure and where are they being exposed. Then the other pieces here on the right are just some of the ways that they're using some of their identified conservative talking points in pushing some of their smoke-free messages through these talking points. You'll see the headings are that the current provisions are outdated, doing no harm to our fellow citizens, fiscal responsibility, and reducing business expenses. And they feel good about that. Like they feel confident having these conversations with people in their community, and folks are responding well to it. Just a couple of messaging tips, and this is from the field, that we don't have to always guilt trip people into supporting our smoke-free policies. We don't always have to show, as much as we care about the workers being impacted and how bad this is on public health, sometimes people just want to visualize and get excited about the benefits of smoke-free environments, and that's okay. And so, again, here's our traditional framing on why our community needs a comprehensive ordinance, right? Because people just have a right to breathe smoke-free indoor air. And this includes all workers and people and where they like to live and play and work. It just is. But we've also found ways to package this in other messaging points. And I'll show you a few ways how this looks. Talking about how current provisions are outdated, using key message points like modernizing policies and pointing out the fact that current provisions are either outdated, they don't address new products like e-cigarettes and hookah and heat not burned and all of these things that have been merged since when these policies were passed before, or they're not addressing high-risk establishments like bars and restaurants and gaming and music and entertainment, and where people are really being exposed. And that's resonating with folks. Another thing is addressing personal responsibility. And you'll see some of the messaging from, let's say, Fort Worth does nothing to talk about workers, but it really helps them to see that we're just helping Fort Worth breathe easy, right? And ensuring that everyone has the right to clean air. And it's just helping them visualize these spaces where everybody's enjoying breathing healthy indoor air, and we're not sort of putting this guilt trip of the worker. Of course, that's our end goal, but helping them see it from the things that interest them. Other key message points, and I'll finish this up real quick. Healthcare savings and saving taxpayer dollars. Again, another message point and example that just really speaks to some of what's important to the audience that we're working with. We've had some conservative sponsors just really point out that, people should be able to go where they want, when they want, and they shouldn't have to be exposed to somebody else's secondhand smoke. And just the reframing of that has been really helpful. This message point, saving businesses money, protecting employee health, and that there's no negative effects on bar sales. And our other very basic point is smoke-free is good for business. And just showing this in ways that resonate. Businesses would benefit from going smoke-free, and smoke-free can benefit bar sales. Again, delivering these basic messages and packaging in ways that they care about. And so that has resonated very well. So I'm gonna unshare, because I know we need to talk about this. And I threw a lot at you guys, but I wanted to share some of what's been coming out of other campaigns as they work to find ways to talk about this in really tough environments right now. and where they're finding common ground between their comfort point and the community's comfort point, to start having these conversations about campaigns and protections and policies. So I'm gonna flip that back over to you guys to see if there's any comments or questions.
Jewel, from our experience, one thing you might have encountered in your work, from our experience in York County, we found that that supervisors really liked not having to deal with employees who took smoke breaks. It was a constant source of tension between workers when the smokers would take 5-10 minutes and go and smoke and leave their responsibilities for that time period to the other workers. And that actually came out of, we, I don't know whether you did this, we did meet with the state and local hospitality association and had kind of a panel discussion where we had different folks voicing their views, and had some good open conversation. And so that's another strategy that that worked for us to meet with that group. And I'm so impressed with that Fort Worth, Georgia. Wow, did they have to spend any money doing that survey? Wow, that's
Not a dime, I don't think, not a dime. It
I
went
love
out through email, yep, not
yeah,
a thing.
I love that because yeah, the school districts have just even more so now. They have to have electronic contact with students' families, and
Yeah.
so I'm going to keep that in mind. It's something we could do with our school districts here because they're engaged with work that's being done to stop youth drinking and smoking. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
if anybody wants to be in touch with that group, I know they'd be happy to share some of the survey and how they went about, working with school board and all of that for that, or the district. But the response rate was great. And what you shared about sort of even the conversation around the smoke breaks, that sort of just gets back to finding out what's really important, what matters to whether it's a group of stakeholders or the businesses or the folks that are in those environments. Like, you got to find the common ground, and in a lot of places that's a big deal, and a lot of that adds up to dollars and cents, especially for the business. They're losing productivity when those folks step out, and somebody else is picking up the slack on that, and they're not happy about it. So the answer isn't give everybody the smoke break. The answer is, how about no smoke breaks? It's just, well,
Yeah.
yeah, So, but you got to show them why that matters. Yeah.
Jill, do you know if the group in Georgia, if they had a drug-free communities grant and that's how they were facilitating this? Because it sounds sounds very similar.
Yeah, so they do, but it wasn't for this. They have it for some alcohol and other drug stuff. They sort of just stumbled across doing something around tobacco. I think one of their drug-free coalition partners helped to, develop the survey and do that. But I don't think this is coming out of any particular. They're not funded to do this right now. I think that they are just sort of seeing the need, and they're sort of in some early stages of exploring. And it just really helps that they've had that sort of connection and resources available to them in other ways. But nothing for smoke free at all right now. Yeah.
Thanks.
I have a follow-up question to that, Anjul. How do local groups get engaged with you to participate in their work or to guide or to help or to support?
Yeah, we try to be as available as possible. And I know, several of the other partners, do the same, but, we have A&R has the luxury, I guess, of just working on smoke-free policy and smoke-free campaigns. And so we get to focus on this in particular, but we also get to really try to bring in, all of the lessons learned and resources and all of that from other campaigns. But, I'm the Southern States person, so I'm South Carolina's gal, I guess. But just an email or phone call to help get us, and then we'll do our best to bring in any other partners that would be helpful to some of this work as well.
Yeah, but what if we want you to come to a meeting? I mean,
yeah, I can do that too. In better days, I feel like I was in South Carolina all the time, right? But we do travel. And we'll, we try to be a part of even very local campaigns as much as possible. And if that means being there in attendance when we can, or being a part of, phone calls and meetings. Oh, thanks, Yarly. We were happy to do that. Like, treat us like a coalition member as much as possible.
I've been trying to get her back to South Carolina for a while, Phil. So it's time on Joel.
I was about to say, well, I guess it's time, because I mean, I haven't met you face to face, and so come on down or over or wherever. I don't know where you are, but come on.
It's been a minute. You know what? I feel like, South, you guys were on such a roll for a while. I feel like you guys kind of burned yourselves out a little bit. And, a lot's been happening since then. But, it's time. And so I'm happy to come back and get started with you guys again.
And Jewel, I'm interested, and Rebecca, you might chime in, or Megan, the modernization of smoke-free ordinances. I know A&R has lots of on their website of model documents. Has that, I guess maybe this is for Rebecca. Rebecca, have we looked at the A&R modernization language and incorporated that, or has DHEC looked at it?
We, Smoke-Free SC, has not updated any policies in a few years, any of the model policies, and I'm not sure about DHEC. I can't really speak to that.
Well, that'd be something that we could work with on Jewel to to do. What I'm experiencing on Jewel is some of the we have to pick our targets here in York County, and some of the elected officials say, let's not open that box up and talk about our ordinance for smoke-free right now. They're kind of willing to work on tobacco retail licensing locally, but they feel like the can of worms could be a problem in some of the municipalities. So but I'd like to have the latest and greatest language, in my pocket going forward.
Yeah, we try to keep the models as up to date as possible. And what's most challenging about that is these new and emerging products, and making sure our definitions meet everything. But I'll be honest, that's part of the reason why a lot of places are even interested in updating and modernizing their policy, just because so many products are just not covered by these older policies, or places that just don't have policies at all because they didn't think they needed. And now there's all this stuff out there. And looking ahead, we're thinking about marijuana coming down the pike, and it's just so much. But a comprehensive smoke-free policy can just give municipalities protections. And yeah, so our models are as up to date as possible. And I just feel like we have to do that all the time. But if you get the latest from our website. If I could do two things at one time, I would drop the link in there, but I'm not that skilled. But just to make sure that you got the most updated.
Okay.
And I saw a comment about talking about South Carolina policies, and I may have missed that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so on Joel, I was just going to mention, and I just put in the chat box, according to ANR, so ANR has the gold standard for smoke-free policies. And so all the national partners, because like Joel said, they're the smoke-free folks. We look to them. So they have the model policy. And according to ANR's report, Dr. Keeley, Rock Hill's policy is considered a fully comprehensive model policy. So Angela, I was just going to ask you to speak to that a little bit, because I know I get confused on that sometimes, and what's considered comprehensive and what is best practice.
And there's really a lot packed into that, right? So comprehensive is an ordinance or policy that covers all workplaces, restaurants, and bars. And then it's like, okay, well, what do you mean by all? Because there can be some exemptions that don't disqualify you for some of those categories, but the policy needs to, without significant real exemptions, cover all workplaces, restaurants, and bars. And so there's some policies that we're struggling with a few right now where they're not real clear, or they may say restaurants and bars, but they refer to a different policy that covers workplaces, but they don't particularly cover workplaces in their policy. Like, you need to cover all of these places in your policy. You can't lean on somebody else's, because that could change at any moment. You're not clear that this is your intent, this is what you want to do. And the other thing is, our definitions piece really helps to define what's in this. I hate to talk about exemptions and what we'll allow, because we really don't want to allow anything. But we do have the standard for covering these places. And to be quite honest, for us, comprehensive includes gaming, bingo, VFWs, like all of these places that, some places may, but some of those may not take you off the list. But the goal is to cover all of these places. But our three major categories are workplaces, or non-hospitality workplaces, restaurants, and bars.
Yeah, we have bowling alleys in there too. We had I have a funny story about bowling alleys.
Yeah.
We were trying to take
I'm sorry.
We were trying to take a youth group bowling, and so we called the bowling alley and we asked about tobacco smoke, and they said, you can smoke, but why don't you come Sunday morning, because we don't have that many smokers in the building on Sunday morning. I said, okay, thank you very much.
Hey guys, Megan just dropped the link in the chat box for ANR's model policies. And Karen Nichols, I wanted to ask you for a second, because y'all did so much work and y'all were so successful getting Lancaster, to be a smoke-free county. Do you have any thoughts, reactions to what Anjul has presented and from y'all's experience?
Well, funny you should bring that up, because we just did a kind of a look back as to how did that even happen, because it really spanned like 10 years. And it was the work of a coalition. And so your members were changing at all times. And so we documented how that happened. But in the process of doing so, did we realize that there were two municipalities that could use a little, more updated language. And so we are working with them. The grapevine says one has adopted, but nobody has seen the actual language in writing, and the other is still in the works. So it's constantly, even though you feel like, okay, we've accomplished this, you have to stay on top of everything. It had to do with, vaping and e-cigarettes and kind of the new loopholes that people are finding. So.
And what about messaging? I mean, do you remember over a period of time adapting sort of the traditional messaging to your communities?
Yeah, I was not actually involved at the time when it first came about, but in reading minutes, that's really what this project was about. Was we read all the old minutes, we interviewed some of the people that were involved, and there was one particular county council member who kind of helped us along with that path of, don't say this, but say that. It means the same thing, but certain words, the brick wall goes up as soon as they heard, one certain word. So it's definitely, I really, I wanted to take a picture of that slide when you were talking about, I think it was the Fort Worth example is, oh, here's all the flowery language, but then here's the stuff that, really drove the point home. So that was an excellent slide.
We can share the slide deck when we send out the recording too, and we'll put it out onto the listserv so you can get that.
Yeah, and I want to say something about that too, because, and I can't say I represent all of our partners when I say this, but for so many years, we've been really strict about how we talk about this. Like, this, we're not going to talk about X, Y, and Z. It has to be A, B, and C, right? And you're right. I think we've gotten to a point where we hit that brick wall, and we have to be okay with the this or the that, or the this and not that kind of piece. And it doesn't mean that we're not still committed to these policies and the people we're trying to protect and our messaging, but we have to turn a corner somewhere. And I think we have to find ways to talk about this where we're taking down some of those brick walls and we can get to the other side. And you're absolutely right about that. But there was a time when we wouldn't even let folks think about talking about this in different ways. But I think we're well past that now. And we have to figure out what those ways are, but at least we're okay with it now.
Mm-hmm.
As we're nearing the hour, anybody else have any questions, comments? It can be related to this or something off to the side that is on your mind that you want to bring up.
Just one thing, Anjul, is the Association of Ventilation and Air Handler people, have they finally agreed that they can't, cleanse air from tobacco smoke?
Are you talking about ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating and Engineering, Refrigerant?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're actually great partners. And it's funny, I used to always think they were saying ashtray. And I was like, why would a group name themselves ashtray? But it's ASHRAE. But they've been great partners. Yes, they've said that in their position statements and policy documents, but they've actually been engaging in campaign. They've written letters and testified. They did in Atlanta. They did in, I think, New Orleans. They are doing that in New Jersey. If you guys have been paying attention with Atlantic City and New Jersey, they may be making all Atlantic City casinos smoke-free. So that's getting a lot of traction. And ASHRAE is testifying that ventilation, no matter how big or small, cannot remove the toxins of secondhand smoke or anything else. I think they're addressing marijuana in their statements as now too. So yeah, they're actually really good partners.
That's good to hear. Yeah.
I do have another quick question. I'm sorry. I did.
I was just laughing at his name.
Yeah, that's right. Anjul, a couple of weeks ago, I was presenting to a group of coalitions and somebody asked me the question about, where is the data that says there's no negative effect on bar sales? Because it was somebody working at a local level that was like, oh, our restaurants are like, no, they're afraid it's going to take away business. So can you, I can get that offline from you or something, but is there data somewhere that talks about that?
Yeah. So, there's been actually a lot of, studies or sales tax revenue studies. They've just been so long ago. So there is evidence that that is the case and that cities, have done pre and post data collection to say that this has been either good or no impact. The problem is, in my opinion, nobody does that anymore. So there hasn't been, I don't think, a recent one done in a very long time. So we could pull those things, but they're going to say 2010 is probably the most recent I can think of, when I think Savannah or Charleston or somebody did something. So yeah. But yeah, they exist. I think the problem is they're just kind of outdated. But you know what? You just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, right?
I saw you had it on the Fort Worth. It was in one of their images about the no impact. So I was just curious. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Respect
Maybe
everybody's. Go ahead, Beth.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Beth.
I was just going to say, maybe to address that point, because I think we've been kind of talking a little bit about that in Greer and their smoke-free campaign. You know, it's just kind of the anecdotal, not hardcore evidence, but the conversations from one restaurant owner, one bar owner to another. I think that also speaks volumes if it's a real person who's saying this and they have experienced it. So from our neighboring Greenville, restaurant owner who has experienced no problems, for him to share that comment and his statement, I think that, you know, we don't have the data per se, where we're taking a survey, but we have his testimony.
Yeah, and you also have to remember that there's several factors that play into the economics, and I think Anjul, touched on that. The cost of their healthcare plans, if they offer that to employees, what we talked about with the lost productivity with smoke breaks. If I think, and that may come through, like Beth said, when you have an actual restaurant owner, manager speak to it.
Okay. Philip, you're on mute. Were you talking?
I was going to say, especially if he owns 5 or 6 high-end restaurants in the community and is the incoming chair of the United Way. So
good point, Phil. That's right.
That's good.
Yeah.
And has been a longtime supporter of what we do. So just added to it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, y'all, we're at an hour. Just anything else real quick? So I know Beth just dropped off, but Yarley, I wanted to thank both you and Beth for the work y'all are doing in state. It's really pretty terrific. And Dave, your ongoing efforts are always admirable. Philip, it's really great to have you on here. I know that Sarah and Hyacinthi from Smoke Free Lone Country, y'all got stuff going on. And so just thank everybody for what you're doing. Thanks for continuing to attend these. I hope this was valuable. Like I said, we're looking for a topic for next month. If you have any ideas, shoot me, or you want to volunteer, shoot me an email at rebecca@smokefreesc.com. And of course, many thanks to Anjul. The fact that she spent her time preparing for us and giving us this hour today does prove that she still is working in the Southern states, and she's here for South Carolina. And just like I did, you guys can reach out and ask her for some support or some help. Megan did just throw the registration link in the chat box for March, even though we don't have a topic yet, but I promise you it'll still be interesting and engaging. And Anjul, do you want to say anything in closing to us?
No, just thanks you guys. I appreciate the participation in the dialogue. And if there's anything we can help or any information you guys think you need or want, we'll try to find it for you. So yeah, I'm happy to engage and talk more.